perhaps more difficult to weaponize a novel than it is to weaponize a posting on Facebook, right? Which is why fake news is much more of a problem than a bad novel. Okay, more questions from the floor? The questions, there's a gentleman over there and then a gentleman over there. If you could get a mic, whoever gets the mic first. Keep your hand up so the mic person can see. All right, thank you.
Morning, afternoon, I'm Arash. Just a question. Do you think we should do away with our 5-year plans and move towards a system whereby we allow market forces to give the direction to the economy of the country, but change government's main role to just as a regulatory function to regulate excesses of the capitalist system?
On a similar point, I just want to ask, what do you think is the next phase of economics for this country? We saw industrialization and manufacturing, and it seems like now we don't have a growth factor. Where economically can Malaysia go to next?
Okay, very briefly, I don't think five-year planning in this country has been significant except for the midterm review of the second Malaysia plan. Some of the authors of which are sitting in our presence today. So the midterm review of the second Malaysia plan basically articulated in some detail the new economic policy. And then the third Malaysia plan after that sort of, I think it was a significant plan. If you think about all the subsequent plans have not been important because what they did was basically they were undermined almost immediately. So you have in 1981, Tun Hussein announcing the fourth Malaysia plan and then handing over to Tun Mahathir, who had different priorities. So it became irrelevant. Likewise, with 1986, you have Tun Mahathir announcing the fifth Malaysia plan, and then within months, announcing programs of economic and cultural liberalization, which basically undermined the significance of the plan. So these plans are really not really very important, except as reflective of the leadership under which it was drafted. Okay, and that can be important, right? Now, recently there's talk about having a new industrial master plan, and I basically am not terribly keen on it, partly because it's going to take a lot of time, and partly because look at what happened with the first industrial master plan. Almost within a couple of years, it was abandoned. The second industrial master plan was hardly implemented, again, because of the Asian financial crisis. So plans are really indications of what leaderships are thinking of at a particular moment in time. It doesn't necessarily mean they mean very much, but they are important as a reflective of a particular kind of thrust and priorities. Now, if you think about the earlier plans, the plans the British did, the original, what is it called, first draft development plan for 5 years, I think in the early 1950s, it was simply a compilation of annual budgets. That's all what it basically was. Then the first Malaya plan in 1956, again, it was a little bit more than that, indicated maybe a little bit of industrialization and so on. So I think we should take these plan documents as indicative, not as if they are really meant to be implemented. We are not a country where plans really mean very much in terms of actual implementation. So we shouldn't have any illusions about that. Now,
can we answer, because both of them have asked you a much more direct question, which is that it seems to be an exhaustion with the idea that government can lead, especially when it comes to the economy. And there's a lot of chatter about small government, right? That's one of the mantras. Small government, let the market dictate things. Business much more pragmatic, less ideological, less given to the kind of fanciful thinking that we see coming out of government. What's your position? I mean, I know there's a lot of anger that drives that discourse, but where do you stand on that?
I think we have a society where we have privileged foreign investment so much that we are basically, government policy is about how to seduce foreign investors to invest in our economy. And this is going to be exacerbated by the, what is it called? The Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, if it ever,
CCTPP.
if we sign on to it. I basically have a very different view. If we think about the East Asian economies which have developed, leaving aside Hong Kong for a moment, they have all developed precisely because of national leadership.
And domestic investment.
And primarily, Northeast Asia particularly, Japan, Korea, even Taiwan province of China, all developed primarily with domestic investment. In the case of China, it was a bit more, more confused, but a lot of the numbers for foreign direct investment are basically what is called round-trip foreign investment. So people move their money abroad to Hong Kong, to Singapore, and elsewhere, and then come back into China as foreign investors. And we're going to run that risk because it will be advantageous for business interests in this country to locate in Singapore because you have more privileges. You can sue the Malaysian government from Singapore, or you can sue the Malaysian government from Hong Kong, from Japan or whatever, under the provisions of the what is called the ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement Scheme, arrangements. So we are running the risk, and the consequences are going to be very tremendous. Already under Najib, if I just may conclude on this point, the foreign ownership is almost half. The foreign ownership and what has happened recently with the sell-off by foreign investors, the stock market has collapsed. But what it means is that foreign ownership has gone down quite a bit, okay, but not to below 40%.
Okay, so maybe actually we need a little bit of unpacking. I know we don't have really much time, but when we talk about domestic investment, we talk about domestic capitalism, is it then coded in racial and ethnic terms? And is that part of the problem of not, our problem was seducing too many outsiders to invest in us. What about the seduction to get a local capitalist to kind of invest in the country?
One of the problems we have in our country, especially among the non-Malay, especially Chinese thinking, chattering classes, is to think in terms of, oh, Singapore has done better. And so we emulate Singapore. So Singapore went for foreign direct investment. And part of the reason, let's remember, after 1965, after secession from Malaysia, Singapore decided that the only way to get the West solidly behind Singapore was to have a strong foreign investments in Singapore. So it was a very active promotion of foreign investment. So the foreign investment rates, ratios in Singapore are way above everything else. But if you think about some of the dynamism, it has come about precisely because of some of the initiatives of some of the state captains of industry, if I might put it this way. Read for example, the recent memoirs of Philip Yeo, okay, who was responsible for A-Star and a whole range of other initiatives in Singapore. And you begin to understand how challenging it was. It wasn't, you had to deal, you couldn't antagonize foreign investment, but you needed to move forward very significantly. I haven't really answered our friend's question, but I think the industrialization part, I think industrialization needs to be resumed. I don't think we've gone very far with promoting services. Yes, services jobs were created. Most of them were in so-called traditional services, very little modern services. Most of it was actually in the public sector because, as you know, under Patla and Najib, the size of the civil service doubled from 850,000 to 1.7, sorry. And then you have also a whole range of other things which were happening. I think there are opportunities for investment. I think the concerns about sustainability and climate change open two huge opportunities. Photovoltaic solar panels, one, and the second one, of course, is biodiesel, which are huge. I think we also need to take advantage of our relationship with Geely to try to move very, very quickly into a particular space in the automotive industry rather than trying to have flying cars and whatnot. And so there are priorities which and there are a few other things. I'm very big on pharmaceuticals, particularly for the so-called neglected tropical diseases, which would include things like malaria and so on. And we still have an opportunity to go into many of these areas and do very well in them. A country like Bangladesh is one of the leading exporters of pharmaceutical drugs in the world. India is the #1. And these are, it's not, of course we have neglected our pharmacological training and so on and so forth, but it's not something which is impossible to catch up in. There are other areas, but there's no time for that.
Okay, so in fact we've run out of time, but one last question and a very quick answer. Is the federal government of Malaysia listening to you, Jomo, as Wikipedia suggests it does?
Wikipedia is a font of fake news. No, but seriously, I think people listen, but doesn't mean they do anything about what they hear. Okay, so I think, but I do think it is, what I do appreciate is that you have a new type of discussion beginning to open up, and people should contribute to that, to open it up, because it's not, if we just have the business as usual type of discourse of the past, we're not going to get anywhere. We need a much more vibrant discussion from civil society. And one of the good things about May 9th is the fact that that the official channels of public discourse are now much more open than they used to be.
Right, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to thank Jomo. Remember, we have to educate ourselves. Can't just have opinions. We need to do the deep investigation before we speak. So I'd like to thank Jomo. You can obviously catch him after this. He's got so many books to his name. I don't know if they're being sold, but please continue your conversations with him after the session.